Thanks for joining us on episode 1656 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
I'm Jenn Donahue. I challenge you to invest in yourself, invest in others, develop your influence, and impact the world by using your time, your talent, and your treasures to live out your calling. Having the ability to do what you love is key, and one way to be inspired to do that is to listen to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my friend Scott Mader. I can't change who I am because everybody expects me to be this way. So that little voice, when it does start to see those obstacles, boy, it's like, yep, that's my in right there. Oh, I'm going to exploit this to the best way possible so that you can't do what you should be able to do.
Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world. In today's podcast episode, I interview Jenn Donahue. I asked Jenn about why she developed the Warrior Framework. I also asked Jenn about why so many people have big goals but go astray when pursuing them. And I also asked Jenn to share with you how this isn't just about positive thinking, but way more. I have a great book that's been out for a while now called Inspired Living. Assemble the puzzle of your calling by mastering your time, your talent, and your treasures. You can find out more about that book over at inspiredlivingbook.com. It'll take you to a page where there's information and you can sign up to get some mailings about it as well as purchase a copy there. I'd love to see you get a copy and share with me how it impacted your world. Jenn Donahue is an international keynote speaker, retired U.S. Navy captain, business coach, and one of America's leading experts on leadership and personal growth. Her mission is to walk alongside leaders, quiet the voices holding them back, and show them how to become the leaders they were meant to be. Because leadership isn't about the spotlight. It's about service, courage, and building others up. Over her 27-year military career, Jenn built a bridge across the Euphrates River during the Iraq War, commanded an 800-personnel battalion in Afghanistan, and led the construction of combat outposts in hostile desert terrain. In her inspiring debut book, Becoming the Warrior, Harnessing Your Inner Strength to Silence Self-Doubt, Jenn draws from her experience on the battlefield to build a framework that helps readers combat their inner critics, achieve their goals, and uncover the warrior within them. Welcome to the show, Jenn.
Thanks. I am so excited to be here.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to our conversation today. So I shared quite a bit in the intro about some of the things you've done in the past, your book, other information, but I always think about intros as sort of, it's telling us where we are today and the end point, but it never really unpacks the journey of how we got here. And there's always more to the story than just where we are. So take us back in time a little bit and unpack a little bit about your journey and what has brought you to the point where this is the message you feel called to put out into the world.
It's actually been a bit of a rambling journey, to be honest. A lot of people have that straight path. Mine was
most people don't, actually.
They'll tell you that it's straight. It's like, oh, yeah, I did this and this. But yeah, no. Actually, it started out at Texas A&M, which you know very well. And from there, I decided, you know what? I had a lot of angst in my life, and I didn't want to just go down to Houston and get a job like everybody else. I wanted to go out and see the world. I wanted to explore things. So that's why I joined the United States Navy. Now, as an engineer and a female, we're pretty outnumbered. There was only basically about like 1 in 10 female engineers, but I had the most amazing experiences. And I think what was so important is that those were really the years where I figured out how to be a better leader. I didn't really have any leadership experience going into the Navy. And I definitely messed up a lot the first couple of years, but I had a fantastic mentor that was able to help me figure out how to be a better leader myself. I think that's where everything started to turn. And once I was able to be a more authentic leader, a more empathetic leader, I was just sort of different than everybody else, but it worked. And so I went through my entire 27-year career. I'm still an engineer. Whenever I've been on active duty, I've been off active duty. And so I started an engineering company because why not? But whenever I retired, I said, you know what? I still have a lot to give. I am put on this planet to help as many people as I can. And I couldn't figure out how to do that whenever I retired. But a good friend of mine, she's a speaker, and she said, hey, have you ever thought about becoming a professional speaker? I was like, no. I didn't even give it a thought. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And she's like, you might want to just give that a little bit more thought. And I did. And I realized, hey, you know what? I do have a lot to give. I can reach a lot of people by telling my story and motivating other people to just be a little bit better or maybe be, a different type of leader that's more authentic to themselves. And so this went on for a while and people kept asking me, hey, do you have a book? And I'm like, no. Are you sure? No, I don't have a book. And I finally decided, this is another way that I can help others. I can put like all of my thoughts down in this book and maybe, just maybe, I can reach a couple people that way. So it's been all over the place, but that's really how I got to where I am now.
Yeah. I think most of us actually, even the folks that think that it's a straight line, it's only a straight line because you're looking back at it. You know what I mean? If you're looking forward, it's usually not a straight line.
No.
Most of us don't if you go back to, when you're 12 years old and people say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And then you think about the journey to get there. That's usually not the path that we end up taking, even if we end up where we wanted to, even if it's, I want to be an astronaut and you actually end up an astronaut. The path isn't what you thought it was going to be usually.
I think all of us wanted to be astronauts, honestly.
Yeah. Astronaut, fireman,
Doctor.
doctor. Yeah, there's a list, and strangely, it's not really what most of us end up being, but that's true. So you mentioned in that you took an approach of empathy and your leadership approach. You also said it was different. So I've kind of got two questions about that, and I'll go ahead and answer them in either order. But one is, how did you learn it if it was so different than what everyone else was doing? What brought it into your life? And then secondly is, how did you maintain it if it was different than what everyone else was doing?
I really figured it out whenever I went to a battalion. Now, I was in charge of 18 people. I was on a very remote island in Alaska. We were doing drilling and blasting, which is honestly, it is a blast. But I had taken on, yeah. It's like I need like those little sound effects,
Pun fully intended, I'm sure. But yes, keep going.
But prior to that, all my bosses were yellers. And so I had just adopted the idea of like, well, that's how you get people to do things is you yell at them to make them do what you want them to do. And so that's what I was doing. And I was yelling at people and, like you do this and you do that and don't give me any guff. And, that's just how everybody was. It just didn't feel good. And there were times when I really thought, I don't know if I can make it in the Navy if this is how I'm supposed to lead people because it just doesn't feel good, like in your gut, kind of like, you feel it in your chest. You're like, I don't like doing this. So I get to Alaska and I've got this incredible chief. So all young officers are paired with chiefs, who's been around the Navy. He's, an old, salty, crusty guy. And he just started looking at me and he's like, that's not you. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, you're not being who you really are. And I had this opportunity. It was almost like a little lab. For 6 months, we were in Alaska. And he's like, why don't you just relax? He's like, I can tell that like you're trying too hard. He's like, back it off and start trying something new because I can tell that this is not working for you at all. And he's like, well, what do you like to do? And I was like, I really like to listen. And I was like, I like to draw out things from people. And he's like, well, just try that. Like, stop yelling at people and start listening to people. And I did. And so by the time that I got done with my time in Alaska, I kind of perfected it. I'm like, this feels good. And, he would go around to the troops and, say like, hey, what do you think of her as a leader? And they're like, oh my God, we'd go anywhere with her. It's like, because, I had put the emphasis on them as opposed to on myself. So whenever I got back to the rest of the battalion, the other 600 of us, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And people kind of looked at me strange, but they're like, well, whatever she's doing, it seems to be working. And her department is doing well, or her company is doing well, or whatever it was. And it's like, okay, I feel good about this. And this is how I want to go. And then I started actually getting noticed, by my superiors that, I was being different, but whatever I was doing was working. And so I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to just keep doing what I'm doing.
Mm. So there's a bit of the other folks that noticed looked at it and went, well, it's working, so don't mess with it.
Exactly. So, and the crazy thing about this is I had written an article on LinkedIn about this, and one of my prior bosses, he became an admiral. He wrote to me personally and he said, I am so glad that you figured it out so early in your career. He said, I wish that I had done the same. He said it would have made such a difference in my life if I had just been more authentic and stopped trying to be like what I thought I was supposed to be.
Mhm. So take a look. One of the things I like to ask folks on the show is what I call the intersection between our faith journey, whatever that is, and our life journey, whatever that is, and kind of how that's a feedback loop for a lot of us between one and the other. For you, how has that intersection affected your decisions and your life journey?
The way that I look at it is that there is a grand plan, and I don't know what that is. I don't think really anybody knows what that is, but you feel these doors open for you, and you feel those doors close as well. And so the way that I've looked at, my faith journey is that I'm being led on this crazy winding path that's, definitely not straight or straight for anybody else. And so the way that I look at it is like when there's a door open, I'm going through it. I'm not going to think twice. I'm just going to go through it because there is a master plan. And so that's the way that I look, at my faith journey is that, yeah, there is a purpose for me.
So, what do you think for so many folks? We were talking earlier about wanting to be an astronaut when you grow up and those sorts of things. I think a lot of us have dreams, we have goals, we have ideas, but for a lot of folks, those dreams kind of get squashed along the way. You know, they end up not following through or not pushing through. What do you see as some of the things that derail people or get people stuck when it comes to going after what they really want?
And this is actually one of my favorite questions. A lot of us do get stuck. And I think that it's really the little voices that are hanging out in our head. And we all have them, whether we recognize it or not. But, we have the voices that say, hey, you know what? I'm hungry. Let's go get something to eat. Like, oh, that makes sense. But we also have those little voices that are like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't do that. Or maybe now's not the right time. And a lot of times, those are the little voices that are holding us back. It might not be anything external to us, external barriers. A lot of times, it's those internal barriers that we might not even recognize in ourselves that are holding us back. There have been so many times I've heard people verbalize these little voices because they start to believe them, like, maybe it's not the right time to go for that promotion. I don't feel like I have all the credentials, maybe next year. And they do have all the credentials. I'm like, wait a minute, let's go through this. Or people who say, I just got to this position, by luck. Like, I don't even know how I got here. Like, everybody's going to figure out that I'm a fraud. All of those little voices are starting to hold you back. And the thing is that you have to recognize those voices and basically peel them apart from that voice that says, hey, I'm hungry. I need to go eat. to that little voice that says, hey, you know what? You're not ready. So
Mhm.
that's one of the things that I think is so important. And I think that's really what gets us stuck.
I think too, a lot of it has to do with how we view those external barriers. So when you think about those internal voices, they also affect, even if there is a real external barrier, how we see it. And so, like for you, back when you were early on in your leadership in Alaska, you were yelling because that's what everyone else did. And even though it didn't feel right, it kind of, that was the view you had of the only way to do leadership. So, how do you think that even what is real, how those internal voices affect how we see those things and how that plays out?
I think for a lot of people, when they see those obstacles, that little voice amplifies it. So maybe instead of like just being a hurdle, all of a sudden it's a brick wall. Oh, I can't go over that. It's too big. It's too hard. I can't change who I am because everybody expects me to be this way. So that little voice, when it does start to see those obstacles, boy, it's like, yep, that's my in right there. Oh, I'm going to exploit this to the best way possible so that you can't do what you should be able to do. And one of the things I like to talk about is like, yeah, you might have an obstacle. You might have something that's like, hey, you know what? You might not be able to do this. Couple different things that we can do. Number one, just decide, hey, I am going to do it. I'm going to find a way. I'm going to go over, around, under, whatever that is. I'm going to go do it. Now, that's one way of thinking about it. But I also believe heavily in like creating your own little army, like finding other people who might have that same barrier. Go find and talk to them, and maybe collectively you all can find a way to get over it together. And also, you have that support as well. So, depending on who you are, if you're just like, I'm going to just smash through the barrier, you can't tell me what to do, or hey, you know what, I'm going to go find my battle buddies, the people who are going to be able to help me get over that obstacle, no matter what it is. Maybe it's somebody who can talk to somebody about that barrier, about bringing it down, or maybe you all climbing on each other's shoulders so that you can all leap over. There's a bunch of different ways, but we have to get out of our own way first and not realize that that barrier is probably bigger than what we think it is.
I'm actually picturing, if you think about the, what is it, the Sparta races, where
Mm-hmm.
they have all the obstacles and the people marathon. And I've actually seen it where there were people running and they're kind of doing it on their own. And so when they get to some of these obstacles, they get stuck and they're just beating themselves. And then there's others that form little mini squads and help each other, and how much better they get through the race. Because even though they didn't necessarily know each other before they started the race, they decided, hey, when we get to this obstacle, we're going to help each other, and then we're going to stay together so that when we get to the next obstacle, we can help each other.
You all have the same goal. Absolutely. It's like, why not help each other? All ships rise together.
You mentioned earlier that you kind of wrote the book in part because everyone kept asking you, hey, do you have a book? But you also talked about wanting to help people and getting your message out. Talk a little bit about becoming the warrior. What caused you to write the book? What's kind of the approach you took to it? Talk a little bit about that.
First off, I'm an engineer and I hate writing reports. So that was probably the biggest barrier that I had. I was like, oh man, it's like writing a really big report. But it's not. I do have a creative side to me, and it was really nice to be able to let go of the very technical writing and be able to start to write, for other humans as opposed to a bunch of PhDs.
As opposed to a bunch of engineers.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, oh, I can
And all
actually
the
like I
engineers
can talk
just
like a
turned off.
human.
All the engineers in the audience just turned off the podcast, but that's okay.
They're like, yeah, I'm not listening to her anymore. But it was a bit of a journey. It was actually after like the fourth person had asked me, like, hey, do you have a book? And I said no. And I just saw their face and they're like, oh. I was like, oh, darn, I need to do this. Because I'd been doing workshops and I'd been doing keynotes and they wanted more. And I could tell this like, your keynote really helped me, but I need something to help sustain me. And I have all these ideas in my head. And I thought, you know what, this is a time to just get it all out, get it all on paper, get it organized. I'm a great storyteller. And it's like, the stories that go along with each one of the points. I wanted to make up the ability for people to see themselves within the stories so they see themselves. So it's really not a book about me. It's a book about others who are, you know what, they want to go out and do something in the world. They have so much on their plate, but they're afraid that if they put themselves out there, they're not going to be enough. And so
But
many people are kind of in that spot. And
mhm.
it's like, you know what, I'm going to help you get over that first little hurdle. I went back to my military background. I really thought about how I had gotten over my hurdles and what the warrior concept is all about. Is I talked a little bit earlier about that mean little voice, you know, that one that's like, you're not ready yet. We listen to that. But we also have this other little voice that's inside of us that's like, hey, you know what? I can. I want to do this. We don't listen to that one enough. And so I started to do a bunch of research because I'm a nerd into neuroscience and like how can we combat that mean little voice? And so what I call it is my warrior. And it's my warrior that's really able to counterpoint that mean little voice. And so the book is really about number one, understanding where that mean little voice comes from, recognizing it, and then creating a counterpoint that's based on actually like on positive thinking in order to counteract that. So instead of just saying, well, I'm going to just try to fix the, you know, the imposter syndrome, the self-doubt, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get in front of that. I'm trying to get in front of it so that even if it does show up that, hey, you know what? I have that counterpoint. We're just going to silence that. It's going to go away and we're going to come out more on a positive side on the other end.
Mhm. And one of the ways I've framed it for people is it's not really about, quote, getting rid of that voice, because I don't think you ever can. Instead, it's learning to dance with it. It's
Right.
learning to recognize it and go, oh, that's showing up again. And I like to remind people too that I think it's in there because it's trying to protect us. You know,
It is.
it's not evil. It's not mean. I mean, we use the word
Yeah.
mean, but it's not, it's negative because it's kind of like when, you know, you want to do something crazy. I'm sure back when you said, I want to join the Navy, that there were people in your life who cared about you who went, are you sure that's the right thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
That's true.
and it was coming from a caring place, but you know, you still have to be able to look at them and go, no, actually, this is the right thing. Yeah.
I really do believe that I call it the mean little voice. I really do believe that it is trying to keep you safe.
Mhm. In
Um,
the wrong way.
in the wrong
You know?
way. It's like it's not letting you grow or it's not letting you experience new things because what if something happens and you get your feelings hurt or it doesn't go well? You know, it's just trying to keep you safe from those types of things. But again, like you said, it's in the wrong way. It's keeping you stagnant. It's keeping you at your status quo. And
It,
here's another thing that I love, and I learned this from my friend Chris Kelso is that he started to go back through his life and catalog all the times that he heard that imposter and he decided to push through. And what he realized is that every time he heard that, he had major success on the other end. And so for him, now he says he honestly gets giddy when he starts to hear that mean little voice because he's like, oh, I'm on to something. Like there's like greatness on the other side of this. So for him, he has a really different way of thinking about that little voice that's trying to hold you back. He's like, no, I'm excited about this.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like, where are you in the spectrum of feeling about, you know, these voices that are hanging out in your head?
Well, and neurobiologically, you know,
Hmm.
if it, in a way, first off, the inner voice is hijacking the same system that is the system that if the bushes are moving in the dark, that might be a threat. That might be
Yes.
a predator. So I need
Yes.
to go into hyper alertness and protect myself. So it's hijacking that same system, but it's about embarrassment, you know,
Right.
and it's
Right.
about social things. And then the second part of that is neurobiologically, like fear and excitement are actually the same exact chemicals in our brain. It's just literally, what do we label it? You know, internally, do we call that being afraid or do we call that being excited? But it's the same feeling in terms of the biology of
Oh, I love this. This is such a great conversation. This is so much
it.
fun.
And he labels it Hey, I'm excited. That's why I've never had a fear of public speaking. And I tell people that's why I've just always called it, I'm excited to get on the stage.
Me too.
And internally I label it that way. And so that's what I'm feeling, even though it's really probably the same feeling that other people have that they call fear. But you can relabel it in a way too. So in the book, you lay out some frameworks and some ideas for folks. And one of them is the warrior framework. Talk a little bit about that, and what are the steps?
Okay. It goes back to my military training. And in the military, we have this rules of engagement. So think about like you're sitting at a base, you're sitting on the gate, and you see somebody coming. So first off, you have to perceive that somebody is coming. So that's the very first step. And it's basically situational awareness. And how we think about that in our brain is actually thinking about our thoughts. Is this thought rational? Is it not? So just thinking about our thoughts and perceiving that there's something there, that's always the very first part in the military, and it's now also in the warrior framework. The next piece of that is to assess. So this person is coming at you. Is it a friend or is it a foe? And so we start to unpack those thoughts. Is it fear, like you were just talking about, or am I excited about it? We need to really look at, is this a rational thought? Is it not? And going through and kind of asking ourselves, why are we thinking this? Is it because we're afraid of failing? Is it because we might have a fear of success? Or do we just, have just a bunch of self-doubt? And kind of going through all of that and really unpacking why we have that. So that's the assess piece of it. So we have perceive, we have assess, and then we have ready. So this person or car, whatever, it keeps coming towards your gate. In the military, we have all different types of things that we can do. We can shoot off flares, we can use hand signals, we can do all kinds of, we can yell stop, to try to get the person to stop coming at us. So that's the ready phase. Now, when we're talking about in our brains, this is where we engage our warrior. This is where we say, hey, you know what? We hear this thing, it's not right. We need to get this warrior ready. And I have a whole bunch of exercises in this to start to strengthen that other side of it. That other voice that says, hey, you know what? I want to do this. I can do this. And it's really about going back and realizing all of the magnificent things that you've already done in your life. You might say, hey, you know what? I'm not ready. Hey, you know what? Go find a piece of paper and write down every awesome thing that you've ever done. Look at that piece of paper. Now, neurologically, whenever we start to do things by hand, it actually activates our brain to start to remember all those things. And we start to feel like, oh, I remember when I did this. And you start to have all those feelings that you had whenever you accomplished all these things. If you do this kind of over and over again, you start to remap the neural pathways within your brain. And so now your brain is starting to think more on the positive side than on the negative side. So if you do this over and over again, you're strengthening those neural pathways. That's what being ready is all about. And then the final piece is act. Now, if the person keeps coming, then, obviously there's different ways that we can subdue them. But in real life, when we're talking about our brains, it's just taking that first step. And I have a whole little framework that goes along with that as well to give you the ability to just take that first step and to keep taking those steps. It's about celebrating tiny little wins. It's about thinking about your resources and who you have to help you along on that journey. So it's about perceive, it's about assess, it's about ready, and then it's about acting.
Of those 4 steps, which ones do you think causes the most challenge for folks?
I think the ready part. A lot of times we can think about, oh, I'm having imposter syndrome again, and they just kind of go on. But I think it's really important that we need to have that counterpart to it so that we don't just keep going over and over and kind of spiral down. I want us to start to spiral up. And that ready piece, that was the part that I had a hard time with, to try to figure out how do I pull myself out of this? How do I be more positive? How can I look at this and be excited about it? So that I think is the part that's really hard for some people to understand. And then once they start to adopt it, oh yeah, I get it. This is working.
And what I find interesting too about these sorts of things is because a lot of the pushback I've seen, and I'm interested in your take on it, is, oh, this is just being Pollyanna. You're ignoring the reality of the situation and that sort of thing. And I don't think that's really what you're saying. So talk a little bit more about what you would say to the person that's thinking that right now.
I would say try it. I've had several people go through the book, actually do the exercises, and come back and tell me that it worked. It actually worked for me. I was in a really dark place in my life, and that's how I started to develop all of this. And I am so much better on the other side. But really, it's social proof. It's social proof of people actually doing it, going through the exercises, calling me, emailing me, and telling me, hey, you know what? You've just helped change my life.
So I've got a few questions that I like to ask all of
Yeah.
my guests. But before I ask you those, is there anything else about your journey, your message, or your book, Becoming the Warrior, that you'd like to share with the listener?
I'm just so excited that this is out there. And I would really love if you do pick up the book, please contact me and tell me your story. I love to hear people's stories. And it can be about, where you are now. It can be about where you are at the end. I think all of that is very relevant. And you know what? I'll take all the emails all day long that I can get from people, but I love to hear, how you're doing. To me, that's really, really important.
So my brand is Inspired Stewardship, and I kind of run things through that lens of stewardship. And yet I've discovered over the years that's one of those words that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So for you, when you hear the word stewardship, what does that word mean to you?
Pretty much the opposite of the way I started out being an officer. So, stewardship is really about how do you help others? How do you help them become great? What can you do in your life that might be a sacrifice of time or whatever it might be to just help others? To me, that's what it's really all about. I think about my own life and I think about the people that are around me, and I'm always trying to think about how can I help them get to the next rung? How can I help them get promoted to the next rank? How can I help them just figure out how to do their taxes? I'm not really a tax person, but I know who I can contact. But I'm always trying to think about what is it that I can do for others that'll help make them great or even just a little bit better. To me, that's what stewardship is all about. I tell every single one of my officers now, or whenever I was still in the military, it's like once you become a leader, it is no longer about you. It is about your team. So stop trying to get to that next position, that next rank. No, as an officer, it's not about you anymore. It is about your team. To me, that's really what stewardship is all about.
So this is my favorite question that I like to ask everybody. Imagine for a minute, Jenn, that I invented this magic machine. And with this machine, I was able to take you from where you are today and transport you into the future, maybe 150, maybe 250 years. And through the power of this machine, you were able to look back and see your entire life, see all of the connections, all of the ripples, all of the impacts you've left. What impact do you hope you've had in the world?
I like to think about things on a day-to-day basis. And I like to think if I could help just one person. So every keynote I do, every workshop I do, it's like I just want to help one person. And if I could take and somehow look back at my life and look at all the one people that I've, helped along the way and seen what they do and seeing the effect that they have maybe on others, I think that that would be amazing. If I could somehow map that out, maybe in another 120 years, you'd be able to do something like that. But look at every little one person that you've been able to help and the good that they've done in their life.
So what's on the roadmap? What's next as you continue on your journey?
Just keep going. I'm always trying to reinvent myself in some way. Like I was a military officer. I still own a business. I'm a researcher. I just authored a book. I'm doing keynotes. I'm like, wow, what else is there? I'm going to try to do a TED Talk. I'm maybe going to do an online course where I can have people actually come to the course. And so I did teach at UC Berkeley and UCLA. for almost like 5 semesters, and I love teaching. So maybe I do some type of online leadership class. I don't know. You know what? The future is great. There's all of these things that can be done. It's just trying to find the right time, trying to fit them all in, make sure that it's the right time in the right place. But wow, like there is so much in the future that can be done. So right now it's just like, hey, let's let's get through this year. The book just came out. I've got several speaking engagements, so let's get through that and then start planning for 2027.
So you can find out more about Jenn Donahue over at jendonahue.com. Of course, I'll have a link to that over in the show notes as well in case you're driving or can't get a hold of it right now. Jenn, is there anything else you'd like to share with the listener?
I would say, one of the things that I like to tell everybody is go find what you love. Go find what you love. If you're in a place where it's like you just feel like, this just isn't for me, but you're maybe afraid to try something new. If you are in that place, go find what you love. It'll make all the difference in the world.
Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you enjoyed this episode, please do us a favor. Go over to inspiredstewardship.com/iTunes rate, all one word, iTunes rate. It'll take you through how to leave a rating and review and how to make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you can get every episode as it comes out in your feed. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world. Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you enjoyed this episode, please do us a favor. Go over to inspiredstewardship.com/iTunes rate, all one word, iTunes rate. It'll take you through how to leave a rating and review and how to make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you can get every episode as it comes out in your feed. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.